check it, check it. Pumping up the meter. For me, a ringleader, bad party bleeder. Niggas with a storm, lead after lead after leader. Hey, can you dig it? I come alive, y'all, give me what you got. Back up, come stick up, pump your fist up. You check the side of the buckshot, your bust slip up. Morning like a kid, wanna make you feel alright. Move it up all night, body rock, show me what you got. Let Bob break it. Slip up, morning like a kid, wanna make you feel alright. Move it up all night, body rock, show me what you got. Let Bob break it. Check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out. Hey, people. Check it out, check it, check it, check it. Check it, check it. Hey, people. For me, a ringleader, bad party bleeder. Niggas with a storm, lead after lead after leader. Hey, can you dig it? I come alive, y'all, give me what you got. Back up, come stick up, pump your fist up. You check the side of the buckshot, your bust slip up. Morning like a kid, wanna make you feel alright. Move it up all night, body rock, show me what you got. Let Bob break it. Slip up. Morning like a kid, wanna make you feel alright. Move it up all night, body rock, show me what you got. Let Bob break it. Check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it, check it, check it. Hey, people.
morning or good afternoon to folks over on the East Coast and around the world and all that. Welcome to episode 38 of the Glimmercast, and I'm joined by my awesome gaming podcast co-host Kentantino from Retro Complex, and we're also joined by very special guest Stealth 40K. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And yeah, Ken, it's been a minute since we last had our another gaming podcast, but there's been a ton of news that we can definitely get into, specifically for turn-based JRPGs, or not even just like JRPGs, just like RPGs in general, to talk about, a whole gamut of those that have been recently announced, and some of our favorites and what we think about the state of the genre going forward in the gaming industry. But I definitely want to get into what exactly about the genre speaks to y'all as gamers. I would love to hear, Stealth, if you want to speak on your history and affinity for the genre.
Yeah, so I've been playing JRPGs in general pretty much as long as I can remember. I grew up with an NES in the house, so somehow, obviously, I didn't make my own money, and I didn't go shopping for games myself. We had Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest in the house. I really got my start with probably those two series, and I think that's the case for most people who grew up in that era. They started with the Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, and they kind of just took off from there.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And Ken, I'm sure our viewers are familiar with some of your gaming history, but just specifically on turn-based RPGs, what is your history with that?
When I got started with JRPGs or RPGs in general was actually with the PlayStation. My friend, one of my best friends in Puerto Rico, was actually the one who introduced me to them. Even though I own like 2 or 3, like Dungeon Magic and stuff, and I got into like hook with them in the PlayStation, when the era of the PlayStation, like Legend of Dragoon, games like Grandia, Final Fantasy, the original ones, but like in the PlayStation era, and many others that got into that, like Chrono Cross. That a lot of people hate Chrono Cross, but Chrono Cross is amazing in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And like for myself, Pokemon was definitely the first RPG that I have active, vivid memories of, and just spending like hundreds and hundreds of hours on Red and Blue, Gold, Crystal, so on and so forth. It's been like a reoccurring game that I always go back to, no matter what generation. I always find myself going back to that specific title as well. And then that pretty much was kind of like the gateway drug to even more like JRPGs or even more like role-playing games, where I was like, this reminds me of Pokemon. And then I started to realize like, Pokemon was actually inspired by a bunch of other awesome games like Final Fantasy, Shin Megami Tensei, and so on and so forth. So that was definitely something that was the catalyst for me to become more of like a gaming enthusiast, and to look at gaming history as a whole and go back and play other titles that I wouldn't have known about if Pokemon hadn't like sparked that interest in the genre for me. So yeah. I'm just going to quickly say what's up to everyone in the chat. We got Hervoye in the house. What is up? We got Ken welcoming everyone. Thank you. MIDI Music, what's up? Good morning or good evening to you over in Europe. And Hayden Nate, happy Sunday, Nate. And hey Retro, hey Stealth. We got Fear Jason 96 over on Twitch. Thank you so much, Fear Jason. Hope you're doing well. Happy Sunday. And we got Show in the house. What's up, Show? Good to see you. Good morning, good afternoon. And Potion Sword Run, Original Seed, friend of the channel. Good to see you as well. We will get into the topics. So yeah, as far as the catalyst or speaking of catalysts, or catalyte, I don't know what the plural is for that, but basically, Kentantino, you made an awesome video essay about your thoughts on the state of turn-based RPGs as a whole, and I mentioned to you, like, it kind of sparked this whole discussion around, like, what's going on with turn-based RPGs in the wider gaming space, because for us, like, we exist in a very niche sector of Twitter where we see each other's posts on RPGs and JRPGs, and we're all excited for each other, and we're engaging on those posts, and that pretty much determines what additional posts we see. So we don't see too much outside of that bubble. And the same is it's the same on YouTube as well, at least like in my experience. I get more of the content that I already engage in. I don't necessarily see outside of that bubble. So I wanted to get Ken's take on, since he's more of a holistic, sees all the aspects of of the gaming industry rather than just like his own little preferred, section. I wanted to get your thoughts more on like that video essay that you made and, what sparked your, interest to make it.
It's the thing that happened there was that I think it was Kotaku on another company. There was several companies that were talking the end of RPE because of Final Fantasy. If I can recall, they were talking about Final Fantasy VII, the new one, the remake, and they were talking about how the RPE industry is changing and becoming more action based. And in the video, I was talking about it. I was talking about how the span of attention of people is not like before. Back in the day when me, Stealth, and you were growing, we will pay attention to this game, and this is the type of game that we will play most of the time. But now you see with the newer generation, they're going more into like action-based RPGs, and you're seeing the time-based RPGs are dying little by little. And it's not that they are dying, but you're not seeing that release like back in the day. Back in the day, and I got a bunch of that I was saying in the video. I got most of my collection on PS2 and PS1 are actually solid RPGs. That's all I used to play back in the day. Now you're not seeing those releases like before. You're seeing less and less and less. You're still seeing, but not like before. And at least in my opinion, like every month you will see a new RPG, or every week you will see a new RPG coming out. Now it's like less frequent, and it's more action-based RPGs that you're seeing lately.
Yeah, definitely. I know, like we were discussing a little bit before the show, Xenoblade Chronicles, and like that's very much an action-based RPG. And I'm personally playing Trials of Mana Remake from 2020, which is also an action RPG. And I love that game for sure. But I also see the value and still have vested interest in, like I mentioned, Pokemon, but also more recent titles like Triangle Strategy, which are heavily inspired by like Final Fantasy VI and like Final Fantasy Tactics. So it was a little challenging for me to try and put myself in that headspace where something that I still see the value in doesn't necessarily resonate with other people. But yeah, Stealth, I wanted to get your take because I know you are constantly, on the lookout for news on this topic. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've spoken about this at length before, and really, like, I don't think too much has actually changed, in terms of like the action RPG, turn-based RPG ratio so much. Like even in the very early days of the industry, like even like the mid 1980s, we had Falcom's E series, which was action-based. A lot of the action-based RPGs and a lot of the turn-based RPGs were on PC at the time, and then obviously they came to console, but even throughout the 90s and the 2000s, I feel like there's always been a good amount of turn-based and action RPGs. While definitely in terms of like the critical reception and the attention, I do think goes to the action RPGs a lot more now. But there's still turn-based RPGs, almost every month it feels like. But the attention that they get is definitely lower.
Yeah, totally. One good example that I just brought up before you got into your thoughts on it was Triangle Strategy, and according to the sales numbers on that, it sold like almost 1 million copies, like roughly like 800,000 copies within the first couple weeks of being released on a single platform, the Nintendo Switch. So for me, seeing that is just only one data point, so I won't try and base my entire argument on that, but I think it is still worthwhile to note these high-selling titles like Triangle Strategy and Octopath Traveler, which I believe also sold like 1 million copies within like the first maybe month or two when it came out a few years ago, which I also bought. So but for me, because I am so I'm personally and emotionally vested in this title, I wanted to get more, insight from folks who see the whole map of, the gaming space and get their thoughts on these examples, or if they're just, anomalies, or do you think that is still proof that similar titles still have, legs to, run and be successful as well? These aren't just, specific to like a Square Enix backed, title. If you have thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think it's really an anomaly at all. I mean, what's the most popular JRPG series basically since it started is Pokemon. And Pokemon, the last main Pokemon, Sword and Shield, It sold over 20 million copies. And you can say, oh, it's because it's Pokemon, but still, it's still turn-based. And last year we had Capcom with Monster Hunter Stories 2. It sold over 1 million units.
Love that game as well. 3DS and Switch version.
Yeah, it was, bro.
5 from Atlas, another million seller. So there's been, I feel like enough million seller turn-based JRPGs across different companies that I don't think it's an anomaly.
For sure. And Ken, what are your thoughts?
I keep on saying that it's going to turn into a niche little by little. Not now. It's like I was saying in my video. I don't see it now changing totally into a niche, but little by little it's going to turn into that. The turn-based are going to be into a niche that you, me, and other people, like old people, are going to be buying because they want to remember. And the new generation are just going to go straight up to RPG action. Like, that's how I see it, because even I see it with kids. Like, you know how many times I tried to sit down with my kids and explain to them a JRPG or a turn-based RPG, and they go like, no, this is boring. As soon as you give them Elden Ring, Dark Souls, quickly they grasp the game and they enjoy the game. And that's what I'm seeing. Like, the market, sooner or later, you will see this. The market is gonna shift, and it's just gonna be action RPGs because the span attention of kids are changing. And remember, we are not the market right now. We used to be the market. They just grabbing up by the string with this JRPG that they're releasing because they know that we're gonna buy them, no matter what. No matter how much I talk about JRPG, I'm always gonna buy them because I remember them and they're gonna be there for me. You know what I'm saying?
And yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and honestly true. I mean, there's a lot of, I see a lot of parents on Twitter, and they talk about how all their kids play is Minecraft or Fortnite. They're not necessarily interested. They don't necessarily start out playing JRPGs when they're younger. They play, or even platformers. They play these community-based games.
Mm-hmm. I do want to quickly shout out some comments in the chat. Final Fantasy I and the Might and Magic series were my first RPGs, but Chrono Trigger is what got me sucked into it. Yeah, Chrono Trigger was one that I discovered around like the DS period when that port came out. Mm-hmm. And Nintendo Lee, good to see you from Retro Gaming Revival, says turn-based RPGs have just evolved now. It incorporates more different gameplay styles while keeping the core of turn-based. Yeah, definitely. Again, I keep coming back to Triangle Strategy because I'm a really, really slow gamer. I spend days just playing several hours of this game at a time just because it's like a really like grindy, very like calming experience for me. So I end up playing less games because I've spent so much time playing RPGs. But that said, I do see that although to Ken's point, the turn-based system of combat may not vibe as well with younger audiences who grew up mostly with action-based games. Mm-hmm. For me, I do see that the genre is, still being experimental, still, trying to evolve and innovate by making the tactical-based RPG systems like more customizable, more impactful to the decisions that you're making the users' impact on their gaming experience a little bit more custom to what their decisions are being made for in the game. So mm-hmm. I do kind of want to shout out that Triangle Strategy for that. It's not just, beat for beat, a spiritual successor for Final Fantasy Tactics. It is, a standalone, well-developed game that is, innovative in its own way. But yeah, I also wanted to get into some of the recent game announcements. I'll go ahead and share the screen for the tab that we're going to pull up for. Square Enix is kind of the forerunner for keeping the genre alive of turn-based mm-hmm. RPGs. And I definitely want to get y'all's thoughts on that first before we dive into each of these titles. Ken, do you think that Square Enix is pretty much like the main one in the major company in the industry keeping the genre alive, or do you feel like other companies are
no, them and what was the other one? Seed, I think is the company. I don't remember right now. There's another company. Yeah, there's another company that's been dropping a lot of JRPGs and turn-based and everything. They've been like on it all the time.
Got it. And Stealth, what about you? What are your thoughts on like game companies as a whole? Do you feel like Square is the main one keeping the genre alive, or do you see others that are also keeping it strong as well?
Yeah, I mean, Square, has definitely been, a major factor, in the last 20 years of turn-based JRPGs. But, there's also Atlas, and Falcom,
yeah.
and even Nintendo with Fire Emblem and Pokemon. So there's definitely a bunch of companies, but Square Enix is known for their RPGs, so they're the ones that everyone thinks about.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I totally blanked on all the different like Western RPGs that are coming out that are still turn-based, like Mario vs. Rabbids. I think that's the sequel that has been announced that's in development now, and the original game came out like a few years ago. I really enjoyed it, and although the combat was turn-based, how they presented the game felt more action-based because of the bright animations, colorful cartoony graphic style presentation, the story. So it definitely still felt, in my opinion, like a fast-paced experience, even though it was still technically turn-based.
And that's what they had to do. That's what they're gonna be doing from now on, because they need to catch the attention of the newer audience. Like I keep on saying, it's a short span. There's nobody who's gonna sit over 70 hours RP now in this day, because they're long and they get boring. Like right now, and I keep on blaming Dark Souls because I got so pampered by, I go here, I kill this, and I do whatever I want and whatever format I want. Right now I'm playing Demi Kids, and the struggle boss was real. The game is amazing. It is an amazing game. For the fact that you have random encounter in a turn-based constantly, like every 5 seconds you will move and boom, it was what killed the game for me a little bit. Like, because I got so into I go here, I see the boss, I have two options. I see the monster, I got two options. I go around him or I find him. So I got that option. In turn-based, yes, you have the run, but most of the time it doesn't work and you have to stay there fighting the monster. So it's kind of annoying. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and random encounters, that's a different topic, is something that is kind of going the way of like the dodo bird. Whereas most turn-based RPGs, even now, you see the enemies on the overworld.
They put in them now because they knew. They know.
And you can decide whether you want to fight them or not. But in the old days, it was, like you said, every 5 steps you're fighting something, and that's just the way it was, and you accepted it. But now it's that aspect is hard to go back to.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a really good point. Random encounters is definitely kind of like a sub facet of this topic. Nintendo Lee says Final Fantasy 15 and 7 Remake were a great way of bringing in more real-time elements, but still having a turn-based battle, even though you can move and dodge. LOL.
Yeah.
I personally didn't play Final Fantasy 7 Remake, but have either of y'all did? And what was your experience like with it versus the original, good and bad?
I played the original Final Fantasy VII, and I played the remake. And the remake does a lot of things right. It looks beautiful. The music is amazing. The combat is really fun. Compared to the original, though, that and I don't want to get too much into spoiler territory, but had locations outside of Midgar, and had a full story arc going. Whereas the remake just takes place inside of Midgar, and I didn't necessarily like what they extended out to make it a full game, even though it just took place in that one location, and kind of the story elements that they added to it. So that I wasn't so much of a fan of, but overall, the remake is a lot of fun, and it really the way it's presented, it's a lot easier to get into that game versus going back to a PS1 game.
Yep. I saw my kids playing it. I saw my bigger kid playing it, because I had not played it myself, but I once in a while will sit down and watch him playing, and it looks amazing. The combat is amazing. The story is amazing. And even though we already know the story because we already played on the PlayStation 1, they fixed a lot of elements that in the first version didn't make sense. Certain stuff that was happening. Now they try to make sense to certain stuff here. I just like how they presented the whole game, and it's more easier to grasp for them. Like, I keep on mentioning my kids because at the end of the day, that's the generation that's gonna become the new gamers. So we're little by little just paving the way for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how to explain it correctly, but
No, I feel it. Like you even mentioned it earlier that, you know, our memories of gaming are not going to be the future's memories of gaming.
Yeah.
They're growing up with like, you know, these Dark Souls style action-based RPG or action-based games that have RPG elements in them. We grew up with RPGs with some action elements in it to an here and there, but it was still very much at its core turn-based.
And like somebody told me the reason RPGs were RPGs back in the day like that is because we didn't have the technology that we have now. Like those games were meant to be action, but they didn't have the hardware to present that game into an more action based type. Like let's compare Total Destiny. Total Destiny is a action based game. Compare that to Total Destiny for now. Tales game for now. It is different. It's more action.
Definitely. I do want to highlight some comments here. Leg says, who remembers the days of trying to get a damn save point because it's late as hell and you want sleep, but you hit 20 random encounters on the way?
God.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about those memories until you just, you know, resurfaced them from my unconscious. So thank you so much, Leg. Yeah, like to that point, like I do have, you know, kind of like rose-colored lenses looking back at my memories of Pokemon, but when I'm faced with, you know, the random encounter rate, and then even other RPGs where I would have to find a save point in order to save, and I'm sort of struggling to make it through a bunch of random encounters in this random cave. Yeah, like those are not, you know, fun times. I'm sure like me trying to convince a younger person to go back and play Pokemon Yellow or the original Trials of Mana game, it would be a complete, you know, labor to them in their mind. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of call that out. Like, yeah, my perspective is very much based on the experiences that I had growing up because that's all I had access to at the time. Super random question, but I think I want to get y'all's thoughts on it. I personally can't speak to it too much, so if y'all can, that's great. If not, we can move forward. But with Square turning their focus on NFTs, do you think that will reduce their output of turn-based titles, or will we start seeing turn-based NFT games maybe? I personally don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think their investment in NFT is going to be related to what their other teams are doing. Yeah, I just don't think the two are going to be related.
And NFTs are little by little, and if you have seen it, they're little by little dying. Nobody's barely talking about them lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are kind of a fad that a lot of people have realized are, you know, very negative, and yeah, they're dropping in value too. Nintendo Lee says, unpopular opinion, but one of my favorite battle systems from any RPG is Final Fantasy 13. I love the paradigm shift system. So I did not play this title yet. So what are y'all's thoughts on this take on the combat system?
I heard that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It might not be a popular opinion, but I actually do like Final Fantasy 13, and it kind of has more in common with maybe your typical shooter. Whereas, you know, you're kind of led through an experience until a certain point, and then it opens up a little bit more. But, you know, what gets you through kind of that very linear experience is how good, like, the combat system is. It's very addicting, you know, in terms of how you can kind of, like, shift your play style and then, you know, try to build up kind of like a stagger gauge against an enemy. And once you hit that stagger gauge, you can just go all out. It's a very fun battle system.
Okay. Never played it. I need to try it.
Spherical Man says, I don't really think it's a matter of technology. RPGs are pretty much based on D&D turn style battles.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I was just thinking about that, like D&D in like the 70s and early 80s, and all these like early PC-based Western RPGs that were point and click. Oh, sorry, what were you about to say?
But at the same time, you had games like Dungeon Magic that was an RPG, and I don't know if you guys know about that game, but it's a really old game from the NES that I did a review on it, and that was an RPG and it was action based, and they tried their best to pull off what they were trying to do. Any RPG is by default based on Dungeons and Dragons, no matter in which type it is. It can be it can be in action, it can be in turn, it can be in time, it can be in whatever. All of them are based on Dungeons and Magic. Like, that's always going to be something.
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to the Ys series from Falcom, who were making action RPGs, you know, since the 80s, and, you know, we're getting Ys 10 pretty soon, and it's still action based. So, you know, I feel like we've had both for so long. But right now, you know, as you said, like the kids of today, they just gravitate toward action games and community games, and they're not growing up playing, you know, strictly turn-based Dragon Quest games. And I guess kids do, and really, I guess kind of the savior of this is kids growing up playing Pokemon, and that can be their first experience with turn-based games.
I think that's most of the people experienced Pokemon. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just pulling up another article that I wanted to share with y'all, especially the partnered Nintendo Direct that just happened recently with all this amazing news that everyone on my news feed that's very much curated to my interest is talking about. So a very small niche community, but I'm very stoked to be following it, and I'm gonna go ahead and share the article. So obviously Persona 5 Royal, Persona 4 Golden, Persona 3 Portable on Switch. I personally felt so devastated when these games were first announced on Xbox, and I was not sure if I should just make an impulse purchase of an Xbox Series X just to play these games or not. And then just like a week or two later, we get this amazing news. So yeah, I want to get Ken, I know you mentioned that this news is good, but it's like it's not as impactful as I'm making it out to be. What are your thoughts?
The thing is that how many times we're gonna get the same games over and over and over again. Like, okay, fine, Persona is an amazing series. But if you're gonna release this whole series, give me 1, give me 2, and give me Sin 2. Like, why you didn't give me Eternal Punishment? Really good game that barely nobody talks about. Innocent Sin, they only came out on PSP, I think it was, or PS Vita, and barely people know about that game. And the first one of the series, that barely people have played it. I barely see people talking about it. Like, those games were the ones that you had to drop first, and then drop this tree as a compliment. You know what I'm saying? So people can get introduced into the series, but you're gonna tell me Persona 5, 4, and 3 that already play like 30 times in different consoles. They're even in Steam, like, again.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely with you. Like, Persona 3, 4, and 5 are the most popular games in the series. But if you're gonna do this, you know, my preference would be to go all the way. And release the entire series, because, you know, like you said, even if like 1 and 2 aren't the most popular, they also aren't. They're not super easy to get. You know, the original Persona was remade on the PSP, and that's a great version. But again, it's only on the PSP. Persona. Eternal Punishment was made on the PS1. It really wasn't a good version of it. It was remade on PSP. I don't think that one was localized on PSP.
The Eternal Punishment or Sin?
I know Innocent Sin was the second game, and it wasn't localized on the PS1, but was localized on the PSP.
Yeah.
And again, like, those remakes are stuck on PSP.
Yeah, and they're really expensive right now.
They're expensive.
Yeah, Persona Innocent Sin right now is in $249.
Yeah, so bring them forward. And you know, going back to how they were revealed, and you know, I didn't want to say this. I kept it inside my heart. But as soon as they were revealed for Xbox, I mean, I knew they didn't make a deal just for Xbox. They had to be coming to Switch too, because let's face it. I mean, Switch is number 1 in Japan, and it's number 1 in the US. If you really want a wider audience, you got to bring them to Switch. So I thought that was just a matter of time. I am glad that, you know, I'm glad that those games now have a wider audience, but you're right. They have been ported quite a bit now.
Yeah, too much.
Yeah. So, you know, if you're an Xbox only gamer, you know, if you're a Switch only gamer, it's very exciting. You know, if you've never played these games before, Persona 5 Royal is definitively the best version of Persona 5. Persona 4 Golden is definitively the best version of Persona 4. Persona 3 Portable, it's more debatable with Bez on PS2.
That's what I wanted to get into too, because that's what I've been seeing in posts, that people are disappointed that it's the portable version. What exactly is missing, or, you know, not as good?
Yeah, so Persona 3 Portable has a route with a female protagonist. That's kind of the main thing that they added. But what Persona 3 Fez on PS2 had was a full epilogue, like a brand new end story content, and also because of the PSP's limitations, they kind of turned Persona 3 Portable into like a visual novel style game where you select locations to go to in a menu versus being able to run around in the PS3 version. So Persona 3 doesn't really have a definitive version because the other route, the route they added in the PSP version is great. But the stuff in the PS2 version is great too.
Yeah, and that one
with everything.
One thing I like, I don't know if it's because I don't remember right now. I have it, I own it, I finish it, but I don't remember right now. I think the Fest version doesn't let you pick different characters to do different actions. Rather than the Portable let you pick for each character what is the command to do next.
Yeah.
So that was a change. That was a pro on the Portable, but it's like it says, the Fest is 10 times better.
Yeah.
Really quick, I know that we are talking about a lot of like tentpole titles like Persona, like Final Fantasy, and Triangle Strategy, Trials of Heroes. That was one that like I haven't called out yet, but I do want to call out because that is still sort of a popular series as well that is ongoing. That's turn-based. Valkyria Chronicles. Like I mentioned, Mario vs. Rabbids. There are these really big titles that are still sort of keeping the turn-based genre alive in the conversation of modern gaming. But as far as like the smaller titles that are made by companies other than Xseed and Atlas and Square Enix, do you feel like those titles only have a chance at success because of these tentpole titles like Persona keeping the genre alive, or do you feel like there will still be popularity for those titles even when, you know, Persona may potentially not be turn-based in the future? Maybe, I don't know, I'm just speculating if these companies decide to stop making turn-based games.
That was a great turn-based South Park Trick or Treat. That one was an amazing game.
Yeah,
I'm reading
yeah.
I'm reading the chat. I'm like, yeah, that was a great game for you. I don't know what to say because I have seen so many indie companies doing RPGs and turn-based and getting famous, like Feeble Bugs or something like that it's called. And that game, everybody talks about it, and it was a great game. So I feel like it's gonna be more nostalgia-wise. It's depending on your liking that they're gonna be famous. Like, I feel like in the indie industry, it's all about nostalgia. How you present your game.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there'll always be, you know, a preference for some people with turn-based JRPGs as long as people want to make them.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny because Dragon Quest IX on the Nintendo DS was supposed to be action-based, but you know, the feedback was so overwhelmingly strongly negative that they relented and made it turn-based again.
Wow. I need to see that.
Yeah, so like if Pokemon ever tried it, you know, I don't know how well it would be received. I mean, obviously, the main Final Fantasy games have moved farther and farther away from it, and it has been a divisive element. So some people like, you know, how Final Fantasy's battle systems have evolved. Others, you know, long for, you know, the good old days. You know, I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I mean, we've seen big series make the switch and then sometimes go back and then go forward again. It really just depends on what the vision is of that particular game.
It's like Astro Chain. I love Astro Chain. That game is amazing. Everything about that game is great because they knew how to mix action based. We're kind of like the turn. I don't know how to explain it. They knew what to do in that game. They did it so perfect, and I love that game.
not verbally typoed the name of Legend of Heroes, and I was also thinking of like Shining Force and all these other like sort of retro games that are still continuing to, you know, get love in the modern in the modern gaming space as well. And a friend of the channel, CM Retro, good to see you, says, I don't play turn-based RPGs, but I did play Wild Arms 2 for about 5 hours and I really liked it.
Yeah,
Yep, Wild Arms is another series that I guess like kind of died in the PS2 era. Yeah. And just sort of like was left there. Oh, and Dark Cloud. People have told me to check out Dark Cloud as well, 1 and 2 over on the PS2 as
really
well.
difficult game, Dark Cloud. Really difficult game.
And other titles that have, or other series that come to mind that were turn-based that kind of went more into the action RPG realm. We can talk about some of those, and if we feel like, you know, the series failed or like it was not as successful in your play experience as it was with turn-based. Valkyrie Profile. That's one of my favorite PS1, PSP games of all time, and going into like the DS game. I never played the PS2 game, but the new announcement for the new Valkyrie Elysium. Yes, thank you. Yeah. I think that one is going to be action-based, right?
Yeah, it's pure. It looks like it's purely like an action RPG.
Got it. Yeah, like what are your thoughts on these series that are kind of branching out away from the turn-based? Do you feel like that's where you would prefer them to be rooted, or do you just enjoy the series enough to see what other gameplay styles are like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Valkyrie fan. You know, I do like Valkyrie 1 and 2. I don't think this new game looks good, not because it's action-based, but just because it doesn't look good.
Oh, they went the automata way.
Like,
sorry.
I mean, yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, the combat just doesn't look fluid to me, and it doesn't look varied and interesting. Like, it's not just because it's action based. I don't like it. Just how they're implementing it, I don't think I like.
That's totally fair.
Yeah, and I guess I feel the same way with Star Ocean as well. You know, that's another series that started semi turn based. Yeah. And this new game, I don't know. There's something about it that I'm not super digging. But then, you know, there's another Square Enix game called Harvestella that was just announced.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that one. It's basically like Rune Factory meets Final Fantasy, and I saw that from one of your posts because when I woke up, I saw a whole news feed of the Nintendo Partner Direct news that you were sharing and everyone was sharing. But yeah, like farming simulators meets JRPG action combat, that is definitely up my alley for sure. I don't know what y'all think about farming sims when it comes to like Harvest Moon or Rune Factory. Okay. I don't know if I wouldn't say that they're turn-based, but they're definitely time sinks to, you know, to play through. So I don't know if it's more of like us as gamers and getting exposure to more action-based games makes us impatient, or do you still find yourself enjoying games like that? Like, Ken, what are your thoughts?
I can. I just can't. I cannot do it because it's so slow. Like, I just can't sit down waiting for something to happen. I need to be doing something constantly because I lose my thread. Like, it's like I say, if an RPG drop me so many battles, it's not letting me move, I just get bored of the game because it's not letting me do what I want. It's just obligating me to do stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I love so much Elden Ring, because in Elden Ring, you can do whatever you want. And you don't have no restrictions.
How about you, Stealth? Are you a fan of these more time-based event games like farming sims that are also turn-based RPGs? They're just basically huge time sinks, but they're so emotionally satisfying for me.
Yeah, I mean, I do enjoy like Harvest Moon games, but like if the Harvest Moon games are on one side, you know, then Rune Factory is kind of in the middle, where they introduce more RPG elements, more action RPG elements, and there's other things to do, and I like those games better. And now, as I mentioned, Harvestella is kind of like on the other side from Harvest Moon, where it's even more, you know, RPG based with some farming, you know, added in. But, you know, I'm definitely more, I enjoy the farming, but, you know, I also enjoy it when they add like the RPG stuff too.
Totally. And yeah, Spherical Man says, did anybody ever play the old Mario RPG for the SNES? If so, any thoughts on it? Oh yeah, Super Mario RPG. Yeah, that was like kind of the precursor to the Paper Mario series, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
Totally. Do you feel like the original Super Mario RPG was superior to the Paper Mario series, or do you feel like Paper Mario kind of evolved it in a good way?
Yeah. I mean, I think Super Mario RPG for the time that it was released is a beautiful game. Very innovative turn-based battle system. Love it. But, you know, I do think in many ways, at least the first two Paper Mario games are better. And even the Mario and Luigi series that started on the Game Boy Advance and moved to DS and then 3DS, I think are better too. Overall games. But yeah, I mean, Mario RPG was also many people's first RPG series and it was easy to get. It wasn't too hard. There was no turn-based battles. Sorry, not turn-based battles. There was no random encounters.
You can avoid
It
everything.
made it easier for people even then to get into.
Totally. Yeah. Speaking of of retro games, Live Alive. That is a game that is being localized officially for the first time, I believe. And I'm in the middle of checking out the demo, and I'm just really excited to play this new version of the game, or like this remaster of the game. So, yeah, kind of like turning back to what we were saying about the relevance of turn-based RPGs in the industry. We still see games being localized that were never, brought over from Japan or, made available for Western audiences in different languages. So, yeah, like Ken, to your point about it still being a niche market that is still willing to pay money for these games, do you feel like modern gamers will still be a captive audience to continue to bring over these Western games, or do you feel like some of these will be lost to time over? Like,
there will be lots of time. The only reason we're getting all this is because people like you and me. That's it. That's legit it, and we have to admit it. The only reason we're getting all this ports over here is because we've been years and years and years bugging about not getting what Japan is getting, and it's true. There's so many RPs that you guys don't know. Like the whole series of Demi Kids, that's a whole series since Game Boy, and we only saw Game Boy Advance. Like there's a whole other series. Like what was the other one that I was talking about? The one that I reviewed for you, Raya. My God, I forgot the name. It went out.
Yes, I know it. I know what you're. Oh gosh, I am drawing a blank. It is
I'm in my channel right now because I went blank. Summer Night. Summer Night has a whole series. A huge, massive series.
This is what will happen if we don't keep these games around. We're going to forget them.
See? So, and it's going to happen because the thing is, the only reason they're bringing all the series over here is because we've been bugging for years. Oh, we don't get this game. We don't get this game. And they seen that the market was growing. But now that we're getting older and the guys are getting not into this kind of games, what's going to happen to those games? They're going to disappear. Remember, we have to think that all these games are being sold just because there's a demand for these games. But when that demand goes away, what the company's going to do? The company's just going to look for the money. The gaming companies are just into the money.
Let me ask Stealth this, because I know that a lot of the sales numbers are reported from you, from other sources and things like that. So as far as how impactful this small niche audience is to kind of guiding the decisions to bring these games over to modern consoles, what has been your, point of view as far as like this niche gamers, to Ken's point, actually making an impact to direct with their demand to direct these decisions to bring the games over?
Yeah, and honestly, I think he's right. Live Alive is a funny story. It came out in Japan, Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, and Live Alive was in the middle. And they decided not to localize it because visually it just didn't look as good. But because of Nintendo Power and other sources, people knew that it existed and was great. So, for 30 years, it's been very highly requested from, older RPG fans. 20, 30 years from now, are kids going to be requesting, the few RPGs that aren't localized these days? And there are some. I'm not sure. And it doesn't look promising on that front.
No, it doesn't. It just doesn't.
I mean, it's really, the SNES fans who are really looking forward to Live Alive the most. The people who have heard about it, through the PS1 era, through the PS2, and heard it was a great game, but knew they would probably never play it because, they didn't want to emulate it, or, it was just too hard to modify whatever system it was on. Now they have a chance. So, I think this release in particular just caters to that old school RPG fan.
Yeah, it hurts to hear. It's like,
you're getting old.
I'm not gonna argue with y'all because you're speaking facts right now. It just hurts to think about because what's gonna happen with the Switch Pro or whatever new Nintendo console and new whatever Sony or Microsoft offering is going to have these legacy titles available on it if at all. So I'm cautiously optimistic about streaming availability because they don't have to worry about the production costs at least, but at the same time, to Ken's point about, or even Stealth's point about the demand, people even knowing what these games are, who remember seeing it in magazines back in the day, 20, 30 years ago. Those are literally the only people who are excited about this. And
really the other part of it is it's not only fan demand. The reason why we get a lot of games is because there's a champion within the company that wants to make it and knows about it. So, the creator of Live Alive is still at Square Enix and has been wanting to do it. So, in a way, there'll always be turn-based RPG fans.
Yeah.
But, as long as there's people within the companies wanting to do it, that's also very important. So it's not just, all on the younger gamers to want to bring these games forward. If there are people at Square Enix, at Atlas, at whatever, it'll happen too.
Oh, and Simon Stevens says, credit to the guy, very informative and draws you in with what he's saying. Got a YouTube channel? Yeah. So Stealth is on Twitter and he has a Twitch channel. So I just have the links in the description as well. Be sure to follow him on both of those. I know you have a YouTube channel, but it doesn't look like you have much content on there. So I only linked your Twitter and your Twitch. Hope that's okay. But
yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, definitely. I guess to kind of wrap it up, just to keep it succinct at around an hour or so for this discussion. It's been amazing, by the way, getting to get y'all's thoughts on this.
It was barely an hour. Wow.
Yeah, it was barely an hour, but still, we covered a lot of really awesome news about some of the recent announcements. So, I guess my closing thoughts on it are that the buying power that a lot of retro gamers still have to even produce these games on digital content or even physical product, it still feels like we have maybe a good, maybe one more generation where our buying power is still going to compel a lot of companies to continue to put these titles out, companies that I know they're a little controversial, like Limited Run Games or other specialty companies that re-release or localize or offer physical media for these titles exist because of our buying power and interest in wanting them. But as far as the longevity of that, presence of an audience, we'll see how it goes. But I definitely am hearing that y'all don't see that being ongoing for every generation of gamer, certainly maybe not even past the next generation. A lot of newer gamers are growing up with digital content, action-based games, and it might not be my favorite thing to hear, but it is still something that, to be aware of as far as what is going on in the current space. But Ken, what are your closing thoughts on the topic?
It is what it is. Everything had to change. Everything had to evolve. Look at me with Zelda. I hate the fact that Zelda went to the Breath of the Wild route, the open world. I despise that. But at the end of the day, I had to accept that new generation had to enjoy this game differently than I enjoyed it. I just had to cherish what I have and keep on playing what I had. That's it. Like, I'm sorry, guys, but it is what it is. We're getting old, and the new generation is gonna dominate the market, and it's gonna decide what is the new thing in the market. That's it.
Yeah, and Stealth, super grateful for you to be on the show with us and give your thoughts on recent news and this topic overall. Stealth is a wealth of knowledge on Twitter, and be sure to check him out on Twitch as well. What are your closing thoughts on this discussion, and any thoughts on the future of the genre going forward, just at a high level, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super cynical about it personally. Things are always changing, and there were action RPGs and turn-based RPGs in the 80s. They were there in the 90s. They were there in the early 2000s and the 2010s, and they'll continue to be there. Both options, as long as people want them. And that's really what I care about. I don't necessarily care if eventually there's a JRPG series that sells more than Pokemon and it's action-based. So now action-based RPGs are the most quote-unquote popular. As long as there's turn-based RPGs that I can enjoy, that's enough for me.
Definitely. And I just quickly wanted to shout out Sea of Stars, amazing title that is heavily inspired by games like Chrono Trigger, SNES RPGs. I guess if I wanted to leave off of anything, I feel like even if and when these larger companies like I mentioned, Square Enix, Atlas, Xseed, Nippon Ichi, if they were to ever sort of forgo their legacy content and stop making new titles, the indie community is still very much keeping it alive, especially on crowdfunding platforms and over on Steam as well. And obviously things like the Steam Deck, which Retro Complex, I believe you just got your Steam Deck.
Yes,
so...
I've been playing it.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So again, still a niche audience of folks keeping this content alive. Maybe hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of people, know about this specific this game and are excited about it. And it may not, mean anything in the grander scheme of what's going to impact the industry, but it is optimistic for me to be able to see that game developers, even newer game developers, are choosing to continue to make this type of content as opposed to making more modern or action-based games that I may not be as enthusiastic to play as much as I would like to play more newer content that is similar to a gaming style that I personally enjoy. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to shout out Sea of Stars because I'm really excited. Although they did have to delay their game, I'm still really juiced that it's still in production, it's still going strong, and as long as it's delayed, I'm thinking it will be even better than it would have been if they were to, rush it out under crunch or anything like that, which I absolutely am not a fan of. So yeah, that's about it for that. And and Simon Stevens says turn-based is dying because developers have let it go stagnant. I was playing One Piece Romance Dawn lately on the 3DS, a turn-based RPG, but it was fun because it also plays like a fighting game. Oh yeah, I've never played this game. This is a deep cut for sure, and you're on the 3DS. So yeah, you are just niche of a niche of a niche right here, Simon. You're the best. But yeah, I think we were just talking about how early on in the stream, some turn-based RPGs are still being innovative in how they incorporate more action, feeling more more comprehensive decision-making ability for the player to have a custom experience. So I still think that there is room for the turn-based genre to continue to make an impact on gaming overall. But yeah, that's about it for our show. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I'm gonna keep it short and tight at just under an hour. Ken Tantino, Retro Complex, where can we find you at, and what are you going to be working on?
You can find me on Retro Complex on YouTube and Retro Complex channel on Twitter. I'm going to be working on a new RP. I'm actually going to be reviewing an RP turn-based that is going to be coming soon, and a few other games like a horror game like Fatal Frame that I'm planning to review, and I have the script already. So if you want to see all that, you can go and subscribe. It will be amazing.
Nice. And special guest Stealth, where can we find you at? Even though I just shared where can we find you at, but where can we find you at, and what are you going to be working on?
You can find me primarily on Twitter, of course. So I talk about RPGs and Nintendo and really any gaming news that I want to talk about. And really, that's just about it. Yeah, I hope everyone has a happy 4th of July weekend.
Awesome. And thank you all so much. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. And I'll go ahead and play the outro. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you guys.